Hi everyone, this is Aaron and welcome to the Staffing Overview for Art Teachers. As we go through this information, I want everyone to keep this important disclaimer in mind. I'm going to repeat this information later, so for this time around, I'm going to let you read it yourself. Okay, so who needs to know this information? There are a number of different situations that you might find yourself in that would lead you to needing the information about staffing that's provided in this presentation. It is possible that you've been destaffed from your current position. If that's the case, the information in here should help you be able to navigate what's coming up. Perhaps you're interested in changing grade levels from elementary to secondary or vice versa, or changing locations, transferring from the school that you currently work in to a different school location, or perhaps you're interested in changing from part-time to full-time. There'll be information in here for you as well. Eligibility is an issue that's going to come up a couple of times, so there's a couple things that you need to think about. The first thing that you need to know is whether you are on a one-year only contract or a continuing contract. If you're not sure of the answer to this question, you should contact someone in HR to find out for sure. If you're on a one-year only contract, your eligibility is different from those who are on continuing contract. I'll discuss that a little bit as we look at the different parts of the staffing season. Finally, especially when we're talking about the transfer window, we need to understand the concept of a like-to-like position. During transfer, teachers can only transfer from like-to-like position. This means if you are a full-time art teacher, you can only transfer to another full-time art teacher position. This means current elementary classroom teachers cannot transfer to an art teacher position. It also means that a part-time art teacher cannot transfer to a full-time art teacher position. So let's look at the staffing calendar. The few dates that are provided on this slide are dates for the 2015 staffing year. So I'm going to give you just a moment to jot down those dates if you'd like to make note of them, or you can come back and look at this slide again in a few minutes. We're going to talk about each one of these independently. So let's talk about staffing meetings. A staffing meeting is a meeting that your principal goes to with representatives from Human Resources to discuss the enrollment at your school and get projections for their staffing for the school for the following year. These staff meetings give your principal the information that they need to decide if they're going to have to hire new teachers or destaff teachers. Destaff notifications should happen shortly after the staff meetings and before transfer begins. If a principal decides after the staffing meeting that they're going to have to destaff teachers, they should be doing the work back at their school to figure out which teachers are going to be destaffed, identifying the teachers with the least seniority for each of the teacher classifications in the school, and providing notification to the teachers that are going to be destaffed so that they know that they should plan to participate in transfer. Transfer vacancies are posted on UConnect for about a week each year prior to transfer. When you look at the transfer vacancies, those should list specific schools and specific vacancies that they're going to have. So those of you who are interested in a transfer or are destaffed and looking to find a new placement should make sure to look at the transfer vacancies when they're posted on UConnect. Transfer itself has a couple of different aspects that I want to discuss. One are the 2 dates that are scheduled for transfer each year. Those 2 dates are specific dates at specific locations where schools and administrators can go to conduct interviews to fill the vacancies that they have. Schools can do as much or as little as they want to at transfer during those times and dates. But what I want to also add is that transfer is also a broader window of time, bigger than just those 2 days. Right after the official 2 dates of transfer, Human Resources will begin to accept transfer requests from principals. But those transfer requests can continue usually for at least another week, and usually to the end of the following week after transfer. So that actually means that the transfer window is a couple of weeks of time. I say this especially because some schools prefer not to work to try and fill every single vacancy that they have during the actual evening that they would spend at the transfer location. They might just interview the highest priority candidates and try and find teachers to fill those vacancies, but they could schedule interviews for the days after or maybe even the week following transfer. Keep this in mind when you contact schools seeking an interview for a transfer, that you could schedule a time that's different from the actual transfer date. I want to repeat here that only teachers on a continuing contract are eligible for a transfer during the transfer window. If you are a teacher on a 1-year only contract, you are not eligible to participate in transfer. You cannot be offered a transfer during this window. You have to be on a continuing contract, and you can only transfer from like to like position. DStaffed placements happen after transfer. After the transfer window has closed, any teacher that was DStaffed that's on a continuing contract needs to be found a placement. So Human Resources is responsible for ensuring that all teachers on continuing contracts have a placement for the following year. If it hasn't happened during transfer, they will actually sit down and look at the list of all the vacancies that remain and look at all the teachers that have not yet found a placement and start piecing things together until every teacher has a placement. One of the things that I want to make sure that I emphasize to those of you who are in a DStaffed situation is a difference between being placed and accepting a transfer. If you're placed at a DStaffed meeting, you are still eligible to seek and accept a different transfer to a location that's more suitable to you. However, if you accept a transfer that's not being placed by Human Resources, then that's the place that you're going to be, and you can't look for a transfer that might be better than what you have already. I'll repeat that information coming up. So let's talk a little bit about open hire vacancies. So after the whole transfer season has passed, after all transfers have been processed, and after all DStaffs have been placed, Human Resources will open the hiring season to outside candidates. Prior to this date, no outside candidates can be hired into specific positions. Open hiring vacancies will go up after all the DStaffs are placed, indicating where all the vacancies are going to be, and these vacancies are posted on the public website. That anybody can go to www.fcps.edu and click on the appropriate links to find information about job vacancies and see the listing at this time. The dates for open hiring vacancies have not been announced to date, so I'm not providing those here, but you should be able to find that information on the website coming up. Open hiring and open hiring vacancies are of special note for those who are on 1-year only contracts and anybody who's not yet a teacher for Fairfax County Public Schools. You're not eligible, if you are not on continuing contract, to be offered a position until this time, until open hiring begins. So open hiring vacancies are posted on the public web. Open hiring can then begin. Schools will collect resumes, interview, make selections, make their recommendations to Human Resources, etc. The last thing I want to mention as far as our calendar is concerned is a transfer deadline. If you are a teacher on a continuing contract, there is a deadline by which you need to accept a transfer. I believe, but do not know for sure, that that deadline this year is going to be July 15th. So you should be planning on finding a transfer if you intend to get a transfer before we get into late July and confirm that date with me in the Fine Arts office or with somebody in HR as we get into the staffing season. This also highlights the idea that a teacher on a continuing contract can seek a transfer well into the summer. It does not have to happen during transfer. So all that information brings us to thinking about what it is that you need to do. If you're looking for a job, if you're looking for a transfer, if you have been DStaffed and you need to find a position, there are certain things that you need to do. First, and I always want to keep this first, you should communicate with your principal. If you're interested in possibly leaving your school and going someplace else, your principal should know that. You don't want to have them taken by surprise when another principal who might be interested in hiring you calls them to ask about you. So make sure that you have this conversation with your principal before you take too many other steps. Next, and this can be done at any time, you should update your resume. Make sure that your most recent work is included and that you can show with your resume an accurate representation of your qualifications. For some of us, updating your resume can be a significant task if we haven't done it in several years. After you update your resume, I do recommend that you send a copy of your resume to the Fine Arts office. This is going to help me, as principals and schools are seeking candidates, to help you find something that's going to suit your needs. If I don't have your resume, I can't send your resume in an email to a principal and recommend you. I also recommend that you update your portfolio. Probably something small, something easy to look at and flip through. I do not ever recommend that you bring your big 24 by 36 black leather portfolio full of artwork, but bring something small and simple and have it ready to go for when you get that interview. Update a portfolio so that it shows examples of your own work, your own artwork, and examples of artwork that students have done under your tutelage. It's also a good idea to include model lessons, good examples of instruction that you've designed and presented in your classroom. Another thing you need to do is to request interviews. All that information that I provided earlier about transfer and those transfer dates when vacancies are listed for transfer and open hiring is so that you can be prepared to get out there, see what vacancies are available, and request an interview. You need to expect to contact the school. I generally recommend an email to the principal, a short body of the email expressing your interest in the school, attaching your resume, and requesting an interview through that email. This is a task that you have to do. You can't expect someone to find a job for you. If you want to get out there and find a job that's going to be awesome for you, you have to do the work. You have to send the email and request the interview. And then knock them dead. Go to that interview and be great. You have to keep in mind that there are people out there who are going to compete for the job that you want. You can't just show up for an interview not thinking about all those things that you need to think about when you go to an interview. You need to be professional. You need to dress for an interview. You need to be prepared, and you need to be ready to impress the person that's sitting across from you, because principals are looking for the very best people to be in their building. So they want to be impressed. They want somebody to sit across from them and really blow them away, really make them impressed and think, this is someone I definitely want in my building. That's what they want, and you have to bring it. So let's talk about a couple of specific situations. First, I want to talk specifically to those of you who have been DStaffed. I'm going to get to the other scenarios shortly, so bear with me if this is not about you. So first, we talked about DStaffed notification a little bit earlier. Hopefully you should be notified if you're going to be DStaffed very shortly after your principal's staffing meeting and before transfer. If you get a notification that you've been DStaffed, feel free to contact me or contact someone in HR to talk more about it if you have any questions that can't be answered. And just realize that you need to be ready to look at the transfer vacancies when they go up on UConnect. When you're DStaffed, you really need to decide how you're going to proceed. I do know some people who kind of sit back and wait and see what happens. They let human resources place them into a position, or they wait and see if a principal is just going to pick them up without the teacher actually doing much active work. But if you're DStaffed, I do encourage you to take that as an opportunity to find whatever is going to be the best placement that would match your needs as you can possibly find. And so my recommendation is to do all the things that I recommended previously. Update that resume, update your portfolio, ask for interviews, get out there and really impress someone so that you can find a great job that's going to be wonderful for you. I also mentioned earlier the difference between accepting a transfer and getting placed. So this is the last thing I want to address here. If you go to an interview and subsequently that principal communicates to you that you are their top choice and submits a transfer request to Human Resources, if Human Resources contacts you and offers you that transfer and you accept that transfer, you are stating that that is where you are going to be in the fall. That is going to be your job. Accepting a transfer is not something you can go back on. If you do not find a transfer that is to your liking, and you end up allowing Human Resources to place you at those DStaffed placement meetings before open hiring starts, you can continue to seek a transfer after that, after open hiring begins. So if you are placed by HR, you may continue to seek a transfer. So, what do you need to know if you are a part-time teacher or itinerant? First, if you're on a one-year-only contract, you need to pay attention to the information that's been provided about whether or not you're eligible for various parts of the staffing process. Part-time contracts that have been given in the last several years have been one-year-only contracts. There are very few part-time art teachers out there who are on continuing contracts because they had a continuing part-time contract prior to the start of that policy. But to date, for the last several years, part-time contracts are 1 year only. So if you're part-time now and you're on a 1 year only contract, you're not eligible for transfer. You have to wait until open hiring season. Again, though, I would definitely recommend that you communicate clearly with your principal so that you can find out their intentions and expectations about staffing for the coming year. There are many 1 year only part-time art teachers that I know who have been quite confident because of a conversation with their principal that they're going to have a job the following year, and it usually works out that way. If your principal's not sure, they won't make promises. They're usually very good about that. The second bullet here, part-time positions can be combined to make a full-time continuing contract. If you're part-time and don't quite know how to make part-time into full-time, you have to realize that you can match jobs together. And if you match two jobs together that make a full-time contract, you will get a continuing contract, except in very special circumstances, in which cases that would be communicated with you from HR when you're offered the job. When you're looking at combining contracts, you have to realize that elementary and secondary contracts don't mix. elementary staffing is done by the day of the week. So if you work 5 days a week, that's a 100% job. So part-time jobs are 1 day a week for 0.2, 2 days a week for 0.4, 3 days a week for 0.6, or 4 days a week for 0.8. So if you already work 3 days a week at one school, a 0.6 or 60%, you could match that with 2 days a week at another school, a 40%, and get a full-time contract. Secondary, you can see the numbers are very different. One class that you teach at a secondary school is worth 0.17 on your contract. So if you teach 2 classes, that'd be a 0.33, or if you teach 3 classes, you'd have a 50% contract. 4 classes is a 0.67. So you can see that those don't match up very well. I also want to point out that with secondary, if you pick up 3 classes at one school, that'd be a 0.5, and you pick up 2 classes at another school, a 0.33, that adds up to be a 0.83, which does not sound like a full-time contract, but in fact it is. Human Resources would then add the remaining 0.17 to your contract as what would essentially be the equivalent of a planning period that other secondary teachers get built into their schedule. And that would make the 0.5 plus the 0.33 plus the 0.17 planning period that is added by HR to make a full-time contract, and they would offer you a full-time contract. So 5 classes at a secondary school is full-time. Keep in mind, if you are not aware of the way scheduling is done at the elementary and secondary level, that the elementary scheduling is done by day of the week, as is represented in the way the staffing is done. Secondary classes, however, usually meet on block schedules. They can be blocked every other day, or vary from that as well. So you could not expect to be at an elementary school every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, knowing that you have to teach a secondary class that might meet every other day. So one week that might meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the next week would meet Tuesday, Thursday. So the two just don't mix. That's something to keep in mind. I know teachers who are looking to match positions together are often interested in finding anything that will match up to be a full-time job, but elementary and secondary just don't work out to do that. So what do you need to know about hiring in general? This is for everybody, and almost an addition to our disclaimer. First, the role of the Fine Arts Office is something that I want you to understand. The Fine Arts Office provides input. We provide input to principals who seek it. We provide input, a list of resumes, a list of names of people to consider, and that sort of information to help principals in what way they need so that they can make hiring decisions. The principals are the ones who make the selections to hire, not the Fine Arts Office. I do realize that some of you may have been hired by Betty Ann, and back in a time when the Fine Arts Office was responsible for hiring art teachers, but that's not been the case in many years. Principals are the ones who make selections, and they ask Human Resources to hire the candidate that they've selected. Human Resources, or a representative from Human Resources, is the only person who can actually offer you a job. They're the ones that are responsible. And again, although I've tried to get this idea across it in various parts of this presentation, you are the one who's responsible for finding a job. You can't expect the Fine Arts Office to make sure it happens for you. You can't expect a principal to make sure it happens for you, or Human Resources, because they're all looking at a much bigger picture. The principal's considering their whole school. Human Resources is considering the 20,000 employees in Fairfax County Public Schools. If you want a job, you want the job that's best for you, that's your responsibility to go out there and find it. If you need to review any of the information in this video again to make sure you know what you need to do that, please feel free to watch as many times as you like. Finally, I'm going to repeat this important disclaimer. Please keep in mind that information provided here is only provided as a guide for art teachers. Human Resources oversees all staffing policies and procedures, and information from HR supersedes any information that's been provided by the Fine Arts Office, including the information in this presentation. If you have any questions or concerns, please call Human Resources at 571-423-3000. Look forward to working with you through this staffing season to help you find the best position for you. Best of luck.